Psst. Hey, would you do me a favor? Grab your phone or smart device and open up that camera. Then point it right here at the QR code. Do you have it? I'll wait a second. When you see the link pop up on your screen, give it a tap. You ready? Boom! Welcome to the Hillsborough County official YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of videos here, all about what makes our community such an awesome place. From local events and community highlights to what's in the perfect Cuban sandwich. We've got it all. We're always adding new things, so while you're here, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a new video. Here's that QR code again, just in case you missed it. Go ahead and check it out. Ooh. This must have fallen out of that video. This really is the perfect Cuban sandwich.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Commission on Human Trafficking and for our January meeting. First course of business is take roll call. Go ahead. I think Ms. Monteleone. Oh, sorry. Okay, we're opening up the business and taking roll call right now. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. Chief Burkhaw. Andrea Hughes, Sergeant Andrea Hughes. Commissioner Cameron Cepeda. Jolyn Loki. Detective Sergeant Kevin Durkin. Here. Thank you. Mayor Espinoza, Dr. Mayor Espinoza. Public Defender Holt.
Alternative member Rocky Brancato here.
Thank you, Mr. Brancato. Jennifer Glacier. Here. Claudette Graves. Chair Klug.
Here.
Deborah Leskowski. Here. Lieutenant Lee. Jessica Covertier. Here. Chief Covertier. Captain Mills, and I know we have Corporal Sablon here, and as a matter of housekeeping, Corporal Sablon has not yet been confirmed by the Board of County Commissioners, so if you would abstain from voting. Beverly Mogulnicki. Present. Thank you. School Board Member Perez. Major Rivera. Present. Thank you. Connie Rose. Present. Thank you. Gina Justice.
Present.
Thank you. And Rosa Webster. Present. Okay. Oh, Commissioner, thank you. So let me do a quick ad.
13.
We have 13 members, and you do have a quorum, Mr.
Excellent.
Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's always good news. I'm going to read a statement right now. This is for later on in the meeting, but as far as public comment, anyone interested in public comment online or in person here, the following statement: the Commission on Human Trafficking has established a period at each of its regular meetings to allow citizens to speak. Anyone who wishes to speak virtually or in person during the meeting may do so by contacting the Commission's administrator, whose contact information on the Commission's website. It's the county's website at hillsboroughcounty.org. All speakers who wish to speak virtually will be required to provide their name, email address, and telephone number. This information is being requested to facilitate the public comment process. The chair will call on speakers by name in the order in which their requests to speak have been received. Prioritization is on a first-come, first-served basis. All virtual speakers will be muted upon joining the meeting and will be unmuted after being recognized by the chair by name. The Commission respects the rights of citizens to express their opinions and concerns. However, the Commission also requests that citizens present their concerns in a respectful manner to maintain a polite atmosphere where all individuals are respected. Up to 3 minutes are allowed for each speaker. So, Administrator Monteleone, do we have anyone registered right now to speak later on in the meeting?
I'm sorry. We do not.
Okay.
The individuals, there were 2 individuals who made an inquiry and they decided not to speak. They would just be viewing online.
Very good, thank you. Okay, everyone should have a meeting recap in front of you. This is the minutes from the December 7th meeting. Are there any questions about the meeting minutes?
Mr. Chair, I do want to make a note that the meeting minutes that are in the packets were the updated ones that you sent to me last night. So the ones that were sent out electronically were slightly different, and I don't know if you want to add anything.
Okay. Just made a few edits and maybe some clarifications. It doesn't really change the substance of the meeting minutes, but just clarified a few things. So if you want to take some time, we can actually approve those later on in the meeting. And if you don't have any questions, we can approve now. We'll wait maybe and give you a chance to review those in case you have any questions. So we're going to proceed to the election of officers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were a few nominations received prior to the meeting. I will read those nominees' names, and then you can open the floor for nominees from the floor. I have received for chair, Mr. Klug, for vice chair, Public Defender Holt and Connie Rose, and for secretary, Chief Judge Sabella. And the secretary is a new position, so if you would like to review the duties of the secretary, we can do that.
Absolutely. Could you restate those?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Deborah Cromartie, Muncie County Attorney's Office. I am reading directly from your bylaws, so if you want to follow along or be able to refer to them, it's on page 5 of your bylaws. The secretary position shall keep a record of meetings and prepare recaps. If the recap is prepared by staff, the secretary shall review the recap for accuracy. The secretary shall also prepare the annual work plan / report to be reviewed by the chair and vice chair, and may present the annual work plan / report to the BOCC if the chair or vice chair are unable to do so.
So any questions about that position or the other positions? Okay. All right. Okay, do we have a motion? We have a, for any positions?
Let's take them one at a time.
Okay, absolutely.
Chairman Klug.
Okay.
Are there any other nominations for chair?
Okay, and I would accept the nomination if voted upon. Thanks.
Thank you. Can we call for a vote, Ms.
Okay.
Yes.
Krasinski?
Give a vote.
Yes.
So all those in favor of Chair Klug remaining as chair, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, you can take it from here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is the vice chair. And we have, the nomination is for Julianne Holt.
Julianne Holt and Ms. Rose. So we have a motion?
Okay, so we need to form a motion for each of those individuals, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
For Chief Judge Sabella, I will nominate Ms. Julianne Holt.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. And all those in favor of Julianne Holt remaining vice chair? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
Do-
Ms. Brancato, I'm sure you can inform Public Defender Holt that she was reelected.
I will,
Thank you.
thank you.
And this does not recall a roll call vote, we just did, just by acclamation, okay. Okay, we also have the position of secretary. Do we have nominations for secretary?
We received a nomination of Chief Judge Sabella to be secretary. Is there anyone who would like to nominate someone else for the secretary position?
Do you know if Chief Judge Sabella would like to be secretary?
I do not.
That's
I
a lot
can-
of work, and it's,
I
I
yeah.
know I haven't spoken to him. I don't know if you have, Lisa.
No, I haven't, and I just received that nomination this morning at around 10 a.m., so I did not have a chance to speak with the chief
Okay.
judge.
Could we defer the motion on this until I have a chance to talk to him? I'm very happy to call him, if that would be appropriate, if you wouldn't mind my stepping out during the meeting at some juncture.
Also, I would like to nominate Connie Rose.
Okay.
The only reason that I would choose her over Judge Sabella is that she does show up to every meeting, and I'm not throwing any shade at Judge Sabella. I know his schedule is very, very tight, but I know that we could rely on her to be here for every meeting.
I also believe, for the record, that I would be very instrumental in helping with the chief judge in the formulation of his responsibilities applicable to this nomination.
do you want to take a minute to call the judge? Okay, okay,
Okay,
good. Can we just, we'll
Certainly, sir.
postpone that, and we'll take that up in just a few minutes.
absolutely.
Okay. Okay, we also have subcommittee reports. We'll go on to that. Legislative and judicial, there's a 2024 legislative session. I'm not sure if we have anyone here that can give us an update on that.
We do not. Both of our lobbyists, county lobbyists, are in Tallahassee
Okay.
at the moment. I have been tracking all of the bills. I can go in and search for the term, human trafficking, and I can say that most of the bills that have been filed that come up in that search are not specific to human trafficking, but they are bills or legislation that already exists, and they're adding anyone who has a conviction or has been a victim of language to that effect is being added to bills. So for instance, there's one on, and when I looked at the title of the bill, I was thinking, oh, everybody's going to get an alert on their phone. It's an Amber Alert. So it's a boating while intoxicated bill that if you are convicted of that, you cannot renew your boating license. There's a lot more to it than that. I'm simplifying. They added that if you are convicted of a human trafficking offense, then that would also prevent you from renewing a license. So it's things like that where it's not the primary bill that's being sought for human trafficking, but human trafficking convictions or violations are being added into existing ones.
Okay.
So, and I'm not a lawyer or a lobbyist, so please don't quote me on anything that I just said, except for the fact that to my knowledge, there hasn't been any direct bill filed.
Okay, so we could actually circulate any type of summary we may have on those bills.
We
Okay,
can.
Thank you. Going back a couple years.
Oh,
go ahead.
excuse me,
Yes,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to ask, did anyone else read this morning that the House passed something on banning social media under the age of 16? Does anyone have any information on that?
I read the headline, but I haven't had the chance to delve into that one yet. Rob, anything?
Yes, Jennifer is correct. I think the challenge is even the folks that are putting the bill forth understand that there's certain First Amendment issues that it would have to address, and I don't know if that bill will have any legs.
Any other discussion on legislation? I know, standpoint, we've been aware of the legislation, of different types of legislation in the past. I don't think we're not advocates per se. We're not going to Tallahassee and advocating for these things, but it's good to be on our radar, to be aware of these. Going back a couple years ago, we had numerous committees, and they weren't just one committee. Right now, I think we combined a number of committees into the steering committee. And so there was an education outreach committee, I think services and resources, and I think those were all combined into the steering committee. One of the problems we had at that point was that just getting attendance and having a quorum, and it was difficult for us to get a quorum for these committees, so I think we just combined all those into one. We can reconsider separating those committees again if they think that's something that we should do for the steering committee, and maybe that's something we can talk about the next steering committee meeting that's coming up next month, about whether or not we should separate those different areas, and maybe it's better that we focus on, certain committees focus on just education and outreach, and others on services and resources, for example. Okay. Also, with respect to the steering committee, that I think there's a number of maybe too many members, and I want to get your input on that as well. Do you think that's the right amount of members for the steering committee, or maybe the steering committee consists of too many members? As we noted in this particular meeting, we've had difficulty getting quorums. Now with alternates, we shouldn't have that problem. But that's been a problem with some of our committees as well, as obtaining a quorum to be able to enact anything, to approve anything on those committees, to bring it back to this main commission. So I just want to open the floor for that, if any comments about that, and Lisa, you can also speak as well.
And if you like, I can read the names of who is on both or each of the committees. So you're right, there are a number of people on them, and there are 13 members of each of those committees, and there are 19 members of the entire commission. So they are a little large to be considered subcommittees. And I believe, and I could go back in my notes, but I believe we had, or not we, you all had decided that there should be 7 to 9 members, just so that it resembles more of a subcommittee than another full-blown commission. So, starting with the steering committee, Chief Burkhoff from Tampa Police Department, Commissioner Donna Cameron Cepeda from the Board of County Commissioners, Chief Covertier from the State Attorney's Office, Detective Sergeant Durkin from the airport, Mayor Espinoza from the Crisis Center, Chief Judge Sabella of the 13th Judicial Circuit, Vice Chair Holt, the Public Defender's Office, Mr. Klug from Port Tampa Bay, Deborah Laskowski, Human Trafficking Advocate, Sergeant Mills, who is now going to, he has moved to a different position in the Temple Terrace Police Department, so it would be whoever takes his place from the Temple Terrace Police Department. The Honorable Karen Perez from the School Board, Major Rivera from HCSO, and Dottie Groover Skipper from the Commission on the Status of Women. I did receive an email from Ms. Groover Skipper, who said that she wished to remain on the steering committee. So if we can maybe have a show of hands, I don't know how you want to handle that, of who would like to be on the steering committee, then we can, I'll record those names and we can move on from there to the legislative and judicial. So, who would like to remain on the steering committee?
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, we can just show of hands if you like, if you want to, if everyone's listed, not everyone listed there was in attendance today, but I would like to remain. But if anyone thinks it's too much trouble to be on the committee or want to be on a different committee.
I guess I should say that they meet every other month, so if you look at the calendar that's included in your packets, it's the, I believe, the very last page. You can see when the subcommittee meetings are.
Like I said, it has been a problem obtaining a quorum on those meetings, so we haven't been able to necessarily take any action on those committees to bring it back to this commission. Yes.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify a little bit. I'm retiring in 2 weeks. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
There's a lot of reasons why I'm retiring, but 45 years in police work, that's enough. I tried it. I kind of had a knack for it, so
Yes.
it's time to go. So I'm on the steering committee, and I just want to let you know that it's going to be one less body for, move forward. I've got 6 grandchildren to chase around. I'm brushing up my violin, and I plan on going to amateur hours at Irish pubs around the state.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
It's good to have a plan.
Okay.
And since I opened this can, I want to thank you for including me. I have a lot of admiration for all the work that goes on in here. And I'm going to miss you guys, but it's my time.
Yes. Well, we appreciate all your time, and everyone else, by the way, on this commission. We appreciate you dedicating your time and attending these meetings. Thank you.
I would like to thank and blame Judge Ficarota for retiring and starting the stampede, for Julie Holt saying that she's out the door, and, things happen. Thank you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you again. Thanks.
Thank you for your service. Okay, so Chief Burkaw is not here today, so I'll get in touch with him to see if he wishes to remain. So Commissioner Cepeda? Okay. Chief Couvertier?
If we need to lower the numbers, I'm willing to step off from that committee and remain on legislative and judicial.
Okay. Dr. Espinoza?
I am also willing to step off of that committee.
All right, well, we're cutting these numbers down pretty quick. Gina, Ms. Justice, I'm not sure if you can speak to the chief's position, so we can check in with him later on, as I will with Chief Burkaw.
Chief Judge Sabella is very willing to continue in his nomination for the secretary position, and I understand that it will be elected upon by this group, but we will proceed if elected.
Okay, and
I say we.
So I would assume that that would be the same answer for the steering committee then as well.
That would be true.
Okay, wonderful. Public Defender Holt, Mr. Brancato, would you like to jump in here?
I don't know for sure, but I know that if the chief judge is staying on, I'm sure she's going to want to stay on.
Okay, wonderful. Mr. Klug, Chair Klug?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Ms. Laskowski?
Yes, I'll remain.
And we'll have to wait on the Temple Terrace Police Department until after we have confirmation from Captain Jacob Carlisle or from Corporal Sablon. I will check in with School Board Member Perez. Major Rivera has some news for us as well.
Yes, this will be my last committee meeting with you guys. I've been transferred to a different division, so Major Craig Timko will be taking over. Captain Chad Cave will also be an alternate who's going to remain, so I'll have to just double check with him to see if he wants to take over the position since I will be transferring on February 5th.
Okay, so the confirmations I have are Chief Judge Sabella, Public Defender Holt, Chair Klug, Ms. Laskowski, and Dottie Groover-Skipper. So that is 5. And I will check in with Chief Burkaw I believe it's on the 21st Board of County Commissioner meetings that will have confirmation for, oh, no, I'm sorry, it'll be the 7th. So on the 7th, we'll have confirmation of the Temple Terrace Police Department, so we can check in with you after that. You're going to get back to me from HCSO. I'll need an application for him to be submitted, so he'll be on the Board of County Commissioners meeting on the 21st of February, if I get that application very soon. So right now, we stand at 5, and I'll let you know about the other 4. That would bring us to 9, which is in the ballpark of where we had initially been. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed Ms. Rose. So that would be 10 if I get the other 4 to confirm.
Just looking at the bylaws, and the bylaws say that as far as subcommittees, the commission as a body shall appoint subcommittees as deemed appropriate and necessary, comprised of an uneven number of voting members, a minimum of 5. And commission may also appoint non-member participants and liaisons who may participate in subcommittee meetings who may not vote and may not serve as chair or vice chair.
So right now, as I said, if I confirm the other 4, it would put us at 10. There is a potential for 9.
Okay.
There's also a potential for 11. So we'll see where we stand with that after I talk with the other members who aren't present today. And we have the same on legislative and judicial. There are a few members that are different. So we have, and I'll just read quickly who is currently sitting on that committee. It's Chief Burkaw, Commissioner Cepeda, Chief Covertier, Detective Sergeant Durkin, Dr. Espinoza, Chief Judge Sabella, Public Defender Holt, Ms. Chair Klug, Sergeant Mills, School Board Member Perez, Major Rivera, Connie Rose, and Jennifer Glacier. So if we want to go through the same exercise, and if everyone who wants to remain can let me know they want to remain, and I will contact the others who aren't present today.
Okay. With respect to the chair and vice chair of those committees, would that be at those committee meetings? Will we have a vote at that point in time?
Yes.
Okay.
Once the committee is seated, then we would have the election for chair and vice chair.
Okay.
I know you're serving as interim currently.
I'm currently the interim both, and I'd prefer not to be. So, okay, so the next meeting will be in February, and then, so those members of each of those committees will actually take a vote on those positions as well, okay?
Is there anyone that I read a name for that would like to not be on the legislative and judicial committee?
If I could speak for a moment for Chief Judge Sabella, we're wondering if it's possible, since he's on the steering committee, if it would be possible for me to be on the legislative and judicial committee.
Absolutely.
That would be his preference and mine as well, if that would be possible.
Absolutely. Duly noted.
This is Connie Rose. If I go on the steering committee, then I could go off I wouldn't mind going off the legislative committee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Would anyone like to, yes, Commissioner Cepeda. Okay. Would anybody else like to join the Legislative and Judicial Committee that I did not read your name? Okay, seeing none. So Chair, same exercise. I'll contact those people who are on the committee now who are not present and find out if they want to remain or decline.
Very good, thank you.
I'll report that at the next meeting.
Okay, we want to go back to the election of officers as far as the position of secretary. And just to recap, do we have a nomination on that?
We have two nominations for
Okay.
secretary. We have one for Chief Judge Sabella that I received via email this morning, and we have a nomination from the floor of Connie Rose. So,
Can I decline that nomination for secretary? Thank you very much, Jennifer. I so appreciate it.
yes, you may decline.
I don't have an assistant to help me, sorry.
Okay,
Okay.
And I appreciate that you'll be, that's wonderful. Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
okay. All in favor of Chief Judge Sabella as secretary? Say aye.
Aye.
Like sign? Okay, great.
Okay.
And also for the meeting, I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at the meeting minutes, but I'll go ahead and take that as well. Any edits or changes to the meeting minutes? Any comments? And if not, do I have a motion in favor of accepting the meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, with respect to goals, I think at the steering committee meeting, I'd like to talk about our budget. And I know we're looking at, right now, maybe a staff report on this, is I think we budgeted approximately $250,000 or $300,000 for the media campaign. And I need to get a status update where we are with that. But maybe any remaining funds, we can target those funds for some other education outreach endeavors. And we can talk about that now, or that's maybe something more appropriate at the steering committee.
No,
Go ahead.
my preference would
Yes.
be to discuss it now.
Absolutely, okay.
Thank you. So yesterday, day before, I received from our procurement division, and we are very lucky to have Mr. Hollingshead here to answer any questions, who took my call at the last minute to be here. FKQ has submitted a scope of work for your consideration. It is a part of your agenda packets.
Okay.
I don't know if you all had an opportunity to review the information that was sent by FKQ, but again, as we did earlier, if everyone can take a moment to look at that. Any questions that you have regarding the scope of work, regarding the process?
Can we do a summary of what the status is and the process? Is that possible? Thank you.
Mr. Hollingshead?
Sure. John Hollingshead, Procurement Department.
Yes.
Just to kind of summary, last board meeting I was here, we talked about piggybacking a contract and also doing an RFP, 2 avenues. The commission approved those. When we went and talked to FKQ about the contract with the other entity, those services have already been completed, so basically can't utilize a contract that's already been completed, so it's exhausted. So we went to FKQ based on the services that they previously performed, based on the budget that we assumed or understood that the commission had. It's the last page is attached to that summary that Lisa provided. If you look at it on page number 3, the services that they're charging us is basically $55,000 for the services to manage this campaign and to utilize their contracts, but it appears that the bulk of the charges are the actual media, where they're going to put the advertising, that they have no control over based on that. And another highlight is that if you went in this direction, our procurement department would have to put a non-competitive notice up on our website just for 5 business days. If it clears that hurdle, we can create a purchase order. They can start work, and then based on your available budget, you could incrementally, if you wanted to sign here or there that you had additional money for, you could it has that ability to do so. So in a nutshell, I think that's it. So.
So from the process itself, as far as would this commission actually approve it, and then it goes to the county commission, the BOCC would also have to separately approve this, or what's the status?
It's at the administrative award level.
Okay.
So if it was the desire to do that, sure, we could do an agenda item for the board approval, but there's no bilateral agreement or anything like that, so it could be done administratively.
Okay. So what's the cap on that, by the way, as far as the administrator's approval?
$250,000.
$250,000, okay. Okay, and so this would be $150,000 as it stands now. And so that's within the administrator's approval, right? And so from the standpoint, we would have to approve it here as a commission, and then the administrator would approve it?
Yes, and just, procurement provides the board a list of contracts from $100,000 to $250,000 every quarter, so it's not like it would be known to the board that we have done this, or this commission.
Okay. So that's a report that goes to the BOCC?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did they approve like a receipt of reports, something like that? Or is it just for information, or is that something they approved?
No, it's just informational purposes, just to track what we're doing, that's all.
Okay. Okay, also to recap, as far as FKQ, I think they're also the ones that had the Don't Buy at Tampa Bay campaign in 2021 and 2022. I think we were very happy with them. Did anyone have any comments about that? I think Visit Tampa Bay was very active in that process with us. Any comments or concerns about FKQ? Or
I would just like to make a comment about working with FKU on the project. They were phenomenal.
Okay.
And we talked about that a couple meetings ago, and especially because it was the first time rolling this out. They truly wanted to know what we wanted as a community and as a county, but more importantly, they really enlisted the input of survivors and survivor voices, and the input that we provided were the changes that they did make, which was extraordinary. I'm doing this work for a really long time, so yes, I just want to make sure that everyone knows how great they are and exactly what they do.
Any questions about the scope of services for this before us today? Okay. And do we need a vote on this? Do we have a motion? Anyone has a motion to approve this contract? Okay, Sergeant Gerken, okay. A second?
I second. Connie Rose.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any nays? Okay, it passes. So I guess next step will be the county administrator will approve this, or is there, you said there was already a posting? Is there any other steps you have to take?
Chair, we have to post it for 5 days.
5 days,
Business
okay.
days, so we can probably get that out tomorrow, and then it would close of business Friday of next week.
As far as the contract itself, is that something that the county attorney's office would review and approve, or?
There's no requirements of that. It's
Okay.
pretty straightforward, so.
Okay. Anything that comes back to us, or we're good to go then? Okay.
I think the next board meeting, the FKQ might be here joining you guys about, you can tell them what to do, so.
Very good.
So.
Okay. So my report earlier about the steering committee was that there's, do we want to talk about any other goals of the steering committee today or maybe in the future? So with this contract, it's about $150,000. And so how much money, Administrator Montiglione, do we have left for other types of
Well, you
matters?
had $567,000.
Okay.
And this contract for 150, so you would have $417,000 remaining.
Okay. And that's not committed for anything else, and so those are uncommitted funds that we could use for more education and outreach.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. I think we need to thank the commissioner for obtaining those funds for us. And are these reoccurring funds, or just for this 1 year?
The funding that Commissioner Cepeda put forward was $300,000, and that is not recurring.
Okay.
So it's a little bit ways away before we start talking about the 2025 fiscal year.
Right.
But that would be revisited by the Board of County Commissioners. And the recurring funds, the Board of County Commissioners has also expressed concern about the recurring funds that are in the budget. We have them now for 2024, but it's not certain whether or not those recurring funds will be there again for 2025. But as I've explained at previous board meetings, the recurring funds that had been there for the crisis center, I believe, the positions and the court position, the liaison positions, Those monies have been moved out of, technically speaking, they've been transferred to the court's budget, they've been transferred to the healthcare services budget. So those funds, while they originated at this level, at the Commission of Human Trafficking, those funds are built within those budgets. So again, we won't know until the board has the discussion of whether or not to keep recurring funds or to terminate the recurring funds and then reconsider what amounts are out there, I guess, line by line. So when that discussion occurs at the commission, the Board of County Commissioners level, I will keep you apprised of that agenda item.
Okay. Well, for the next steering committee meeting, that subcommittee would like to address the remaining funds and other things we can do with those funds. When it comes to education, outreach, awareness, those are things, some of the things we can do. I mean, we'd like to do a lot more. I know there's a lot of issues about, treatment and maybe residential care, and there's a number of things that we could discuss, but I'd like to see what we can do with those funds available to make a difference in our community. Also, I'm not sure about the other organizations, but this week at the port, we did training on Monday. We have a group called Business Ending Slavery and Trafficking. It's part of the U.S. Department of Transportation's Combating Human Trafficking and Transportation Impact. They provided training to our staff in person on Monday. Different feedback on that. I'd like to get more feedback from our staff. I think we had about 75 employees. That's about half our employees were able to attend. We have a lot of security people and operations people who could not attend. But so I'd like to get feedback maybe from other organizations about what kind of educational programs or maybe videotapes or presentations you found instructive or useful. Now, I don't think all of them are that instructive perhaps, but maybe there's something else we could gear that towards. We could have some educational programs that the community can use, or companies here locally, or NGOs, or governments could also use that for training. Good. Ms. Justice?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to say that our court managers, we call them case managers, who work in various divisions of the organization, are encouraged to, and we pay for, their participation in a Florida State University online human trafficking course. Very intensive, takes about a full semester. They're able to use their downtime within the court to do it, but they also expend considerable of their personal time to complete some of the obligations that are instrumental to the program, but we found that they get a lot out of it.
Very good.
And can I also add one other thing?
Absolutely.
While you were talking about having the steering committee contemplate expenses, one of the things that the court has embarked upon, and this is a small scale of the rendering of the poster that we've used, but this is the Florida Department of Health poster that is meant to be displayed and is required to be displayed according to statute in some healthcare establishments. We have made it a sticker that's about 11 by 14, and we are deploying them on the inside of all public bathroom stalls within courthouse facilities. We've completed throughout the Edgecombe Courthouse, and we are moving on to the criminal annex, and then we're doing all the other public stalls at 419 Pierce and 700 Twigs, where we have space, and Plant City's courthouse as well. I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. And so I just brought that up just for the steering committee later on. We don't need to recreate the wheel, but there might be opportunities. There's existing educational programs and videos and things like that that we can just share without us having to spend money on that. We want to make sure we spend our money wisely. I know it's hard to get that money from the VOCC, and once again, thank the commissioner for obtaining that funds for us. So if you don't mind, we'll take that up at the steering committee next month. Okay, moving on to the data collection, HD coordination effort. Do you have a presentation on that?
Yeah, thank you. Just some discussion. Ms. Monteleone asked me to discuss some of the challenges that we've recently encountered regarding consistent data and metrics related to human trafficking, specifically in our county. We regularly receive inquiries from various stakeholders regarding the prevalence rates of human trafficking in Hillsborough County. Recently, the Administrative Office of the Courts went through a review of trafficking cases, and to be honest with you, it's probably the most comprehensive review of the issue that's happened here in our county in the last probably 10 years, and they did an awesome job on that. There are many data sources to obtain data on human trafficking at the federal, state, and local level, and also from the nonprofit sector. However, there's very little consistency in how that data is collected, what target populations are being measured, or even the concrete operational definitions of human trafficking. And now, I wasn't at the December meeting, but I did have a chance to listen to it, and that was a discussion point. And you know, there tends to be some dissonance in that because of different perspectives coming to these meetings and the various stakeholders. Some of the most historically reliable data, such as the FBI's Uniform Crime Report and the newer National Incident-Based Reporting System, are going through some traditional growing pains, and that's probably stating it mildly, and they're not yet producing really valid and reliable data. And I actually gave you a handout of the new NIBRS data system. It's the one that looks like this. It's got some blue bars. Okay. In 2021, the FBI switched how they collect their criminal justice data from the old UCR system to this new incident-based reporting system. And in theory, this is going to be incredibly helpful to criminal justice practitioners and stakeholders, because unlike the UCR that captured high-level data, the NIBRS data will actually be able to capture issues at the crime level, and the relationship between the perpetrators and victims, and heretofore that was not available. It will be able to provide you demographics on the specific crimes, the ages, the sexes, the race, ethnicities, location type. And for human trafficking, that's a really key metric. If you shift to page 2 of that report, you'll see that they actually break it down to the location type, including residences, hotels and motels, bars and nightclubs. On the right side of that, you see victim relationship to the offender. And these are actually drop downs. These fields are actually a lot larger. These are data points that we've never had access to. And eventually, when this system is up and running as it is supposed to, we'll be able to peel out that data at the county level. I'm mentioning that because it's going to be a very valuable tool, but it's not useful yet because of some of these transition issues. Even though it was supposed to be fully implemented in 2021, about 2/3 of the law enforcement agencies in Florida have had some significant challenges and have not been able to fully implement it. And that's true across the country. I think they thought it would be easier than it actually is with any major data project. But I wanted you to be aware of that because this is going to really help inform the work of this group. As far as the definitional issues, obviously there are valid reasons for the dissonance in definitions. Among them is the fact that human trafficking stakeholders come from varying disciplines and backgrounds. Those in the criminal justice system tend to focus on the federal and state definitions of sex and labor trafficking, while those in the nonprofit sector sometimes include all forms of sexual and labor exploitation in their definitions. So it creates kind of a dissonance when we're talking, when we're sharing data. I think Ms. Holt appropriately stated last month that it's complicated. It depends on who you're talking to. But folks need to be aware of that. Regardless of the dissonance, it would actually be helpful for this group to have agreed upon definitions and specific metrics, including outcomes and outputs that the commission can utilize for their strategic planning activities. And again, I recall the commission talked a little bit about that at their last meeting. That data would be helpful for the commission's problem solving, but it would also be helpful for you to pursue external funding. We've been very lucky that the Board of County Commissioners, Commissioner Cameron Cepeda, has been very vocal advocates for this group and securing local funding. But the reality is, I had my staff check as recently as this week, is there federal funding out there to support your efforts? And the answer is yes. Last year alone, there was about $100 million in federal funds that could have went to human trafficking support. And I'm talking above and beyond what's already coming here. That includes housing assistance. They even have grants to help task forces become more collaborative. They have grants to improve outcomes for child and youth survivors, to improve integration of services for survivors. They have prevention grants out there. And then, of course, as the chair mentioned, the need for additional services, $100 million last year alone. So those dollars are there, and this commission doesn't necessarily have to be the one applying for those funds, although in many cases they could. They could support some of the nonprofits that are constituents of this commission to apply for it and help them achieve the outcomes of the commission. So we wanted to talk about that, consistent data, make sure we're all comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges, and then acknowledgement that if you have that, it really will help you pursue external funding outside of the county at the state and federal level. So those are my discussion points. I also wanted to point out, and again, as we get these inquiries about human trafficking data, there's some real reasons why we're comparing apples to oranges sometimes. A couple of years ago, Florida Department of Health did this human trafficking profile. That's the handout that you have here. And again, an excellent attempt to kind of coalesce all the data that's being collected on human trafficking. They've got data on victims, the risk factors, the consequences, which of course is a concern for this group. But look over on the right where it says data source, all the different data sources that they had to look at and stroll through the data to be able to put this somewhat cogent report together. I think that's indicative of this system, the human trafficking system that we have. Up until recently, there hasn't been the level of coordination that there is now, but it has posed a challenge for us. And then also I wanted, and I've mentioned this at previous meetings, the OPAGA report that they're required to do by statute every year is an outstanding resource for this commission to assess where you're at and where you need to go. And of course, the OPAGA report focuses on youth who are survivors of CSE. But in your handout, you have Appendix C, and I went ahead and highlighted Hillsborough County, and that's verified CSE victims for last year. This report was recently published. But again, that needs to be part of the discussion. We get inquiries all the time. We need to talk about everyone being on the same page on this issue, and then the value of everybody being on the same page. And that value is bringing additional resources to bear. So that's my stick.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments about this data? And maybe it's the first time you've seen some of this, but any input and anything, any way to enhance this, or any comments about your experiences in these areas, or as far as getting more information, gathering that information? Go back to your comment about the funding and the residential care. A lot of these issues are new to me, and I'm becoming aware of it, and I was actually quite shocked that there's not more residential facilities available for young men and women. And I think for young men over the age of 18, I don't think there's anything available. There's no facilities. This is, I think, what my understanding of this, and maybe some of you can speak up to this, is that trying to take people out of those communities and put them in, separate them from these areas that they're being subject to trafficking, and they're back in the same community, and they end up with the same bad actors, et cetera. You have to remove them from those situations, and there needs to probably be more funding for facilities like that to take people outside those areas. I'm not sure everyone has any comments about those issues, but I think this data is going to help us with that.
Well, on the youth end of it, right now we don't have a crossover court, and there is definite issues with placements and youth being advised that they can deny placement. They have that right in the state of Florida, and we have many attorney ad litems who point that out to our youth right away. My belief is that our attorney ad litems should be there to do what's for the best interest of the child, and not necessarily spreading out, okay, you're right, you're right, you're right, you're right. Yes, it's your right, but is that in your best interest? And so when it comes to housing and things of that nature, that's where we're often hitting a brick wall, is that they're constantly having whispered in their ear, you can deny this placement, you can deny this placement. Obviously, if you're a 15-year-old, that's something that, and you're told that you can't have your phone, because then, of course, you can be in contact with those bad actors. It's a constant circle where we don't have proper placement for these youth where they can be kept safe, and where judges who want to be helpful but they don't have laws to back them up where they can say, I'm sorry, you're going here, and this is where you're going to stay until we know that you're on the road to recovery. So that's something that we run into all the time.
Yes.
Just a few comments. I've spent a lot of time in court, and professionally, just to be clear, not personally, including dependency court, and I can say that our dependency judges do a good job of assessing the situation, using Administrative Office of the Courts, Department of Children and Family Staff and recommendations to try and place the youth. And this actually is discussed pretty comprehensively in the OPAGA report, the most recent OPAGA report. And one of the challenges, and Jennifer mentioned this, there just aren't enough resources. And it's true that sometimes youth are told you don't have to do this, or you don't have to go there, but it's also true that there should be options and choices for those youth. Some of these youth have been to those programs before, or have other youth that they know that are in those programs. And if there were 5 programs that they could pick among, they would be much more likely to have choice and skin in the game in their future. OPAGA report also talks about the paucity of those residential services and the wait list. And even if Judge so-and-so and the courts and DCF referred somebody and they'll take them, those kids might be on a wait list for some time. And that really creates a delay in the system. And again, look at the OPAGA report. The OPAGA report does a really good job of quantifying the residential services that are available for those youth. And even though I think we've gotten a lot better in the last 5 years at identifying the issue of HT and providing public awareness, it seems like we take a step forward in funding of the resources, and then we take a step backwards in funding of the resources. And you'll see that in the report as well. So, I've, as somebody who's sent survivors out of our county for services on many, many occasions, because that's where they were available, it would be nice to have immediate, ready access for those individuals that need it.
I agree with everything that you say, and you bring in a lot of great valid points. And actually, sending out of county is often a great, safe thing for a child that's being trafficked in Hillsborough County. We don't want them with their bad actors here in Hillsborough County. But then that kind of overlays with where a crossover court is so beneficial, because then you have a child who, for instance, is sent to Palm Beach County for services, but has siblings that are placed in Polk County. And then a judge who doesn't even know that these cases are going on says, okay, I'm going to order weekly visitation for these children with each other, Palm Beach County and Polk County. We see it all the time. Okay, all of a sudden that placement that was so great in Palm Beach County isn't working so well any longer. When you have a crossover court and you see that you have a judge that is, okay, we've got this element, we've got this element, we've got, we even have something going on in mental health court here. All of those things come into deciding placement and placements that work, and that's what I see, so.
Ms. Rose, you have a comment?
Jennifer, thank you. And it does remind me of some instance that we had with youth in a safe house in Tampa, and where their families were outside the county. And then in order to get transportation for them, because you want to have reunification with the family, if that is possible, just to be able to do that alone was very cumbersome. It was at some points almost impossible. And then, of course, the youth again was like, well, you're denying me to be able to see my family. It wasn't the case. There wasn't enough services or transportation to be able to fulfill that. The other side of that is, as Jennifer pointed out, one, absolutely, we do not have enough resources. Two, where does that youth, and I'm going to say adults, where do they go when they're waiting for that bed, for that program to go into? There's no middle ground. And without having the proper courts for both youth and adults to be able to at least provide those wraparound services and to be able to check on them on a constant basis and for that accountability, 9 times out of 10, they end up staying with the perpetrator, or they go back to the perpetrator.
Well, Ms. Rose, I can speak to what our county did with a child last week as they spent the night in
ER?
No, in an adult jail outside in the waiting room all night. And this child did nothing wrong. They weren't on the run. All they said was, I'm not comfortable in my placement with some things that are going on. And that child, in a cold night, had one blanket and spent the night sleeping in the waiting room of an adult jail. So we don't have the resources.
And I just want to piggyback. My fear is, and I apologize, I didn't catch when you were talking about funding. Who would we get the funding from? Are you talking OVC or you're talking VOCA? Because VOCA is doing a major cut. And as a matter of fact, there's been several interviews and conversations about the cuts in the state of Florida with VOCA alone.
No, that's a good
So
question.
I just want clarification, and I apologize,
These are
I
all
didn't
federal
catch it.
sources. Most of them are under Department of Justice funding.
Okay.
VOCA is one of the programs, and you're right about the potential cuts moving forward. But
Major cuts.
There's multiple program offices under Department of Justice.
Okay.
VOCA is just one of them.
Okay, thank you.
We'll take one more comment, then we're going to go on to the staff report. Ms. Justice?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to address the subject of the continual need for a crossover division. Catherine Esrick, who's the administrative judges over Unified Family and very instrumental in presiding over and overseeing our dependency divisions, has had a number of meetings with some of the dependency and delinquency stakeholders in an effort to potentially revitalize the crossover division with an eye towards being the judge who would preside over that division herself. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. I mean, she's very mindful of the fact that Children's Legal Services, who would have, the involvement of every child, would be there to be able to have a opportunity to place on the record that the child at hand is at risk for a human trafficking identification, potentially verification. I just wanted to make everybody aware of that so that I'm available for any questions that might be applicable to that after we adjourn. I know we're on a time schedule at this juncture.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Ms. Monteleone?
For the
Staff report, yes,
Okay,
yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't sure if you wanted me to comment on that
just staff
topic,
report.
because that is not my area of expertise, but I appreciate everyone sharing their thoughts and their experiences with this commission, because from what I view, the work that this commission does is, education, and every time there's a meeting, the information we receive and the experiences of each of you who work in the field and have firsthand knowledge is imparting that upon everyone sitting around this table and everyone who watches this either live or as a archived meeting. So with that, I would like to give a recap of the membership we have pending at this juncture. These are all for, well, except for one. We have a primary member being confirmed on February 7th, the Board of County Commissioners meeting. That would be, as I had previously mentioned, Captain Jacob Carlisle with the Temple Terrace Police Department. Also on the February 7th agenda will be Corporal Alyssa Sablon, who is here today as his alternate. We have Ryan First, your alternate, Mr. Chair, from the port, and Tracy Dishman, who will be the chief deputy from the SUV unit of the State Attorney's Office. She's the deputy chief now, and she will be the alternate to Chief Cavortier. Those are for the February 7th meeting. Then on the 21st, we will have Sergeant, Corporal, Officer, thank you. Had to check, I'm sorry. Pascali, who will be applying for the primary membership that Detective Sergeant Durkin sits in now. And then you will need to have an alternate appointed, so I'll need a secondary application. Her application will be before the board on February 21st. I'd like one of our alternate members who has already been confirmed is here, Mr. Gregory Rice. He's with the Hilton Downtown Convention Center. Am I correct in that? Thank you. So when Ms. Mogilnicki is not here, he will be her alternate. So we welcome Mr. Rice to the fold. And we have a guest today. We have Sarah Batchelder from Sail of Freedom. You might recognize her name or her face. She's been very actively involved with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Sail of Freedom has, and we appreciate the work that she does as well, and for attending with us today. I have another alternate that I have not yet received an application for, but has been identified. It's from the Hillsborough County School District. We will have the alternate in Ashley Capucci. So as soon as I receive her application, we will schedule her on a Board of County Commissioners agenda for confirmation. There are applications. Today, I believe, or last night, I received the application for the Crisis Center's alternate, so that application will also go on the February 21st agenda. Lieutenant Lee isn't here today from Plant City Police Department, but I will be in touch with him. I have not yet received an application for his alternate, and I have not received an application for the alternate for our religious institutions member. That's the update on the alternates and the applications that we have pending. We've already discussed, and I'm trying to go back to my agenda here. We've already discussed the procurement status for FKQ, so I'll skip that. The statewide task force information we discussed at the previous meeting of the steering committee. I'm waiting for the minutes from 2 meetings that they had, one in December and one just on the January 19th. Those minutes have not, I made the public records request, but they're not yet available. When they are available, I will distribute them. I did put the date of the next meeting of the statewide task force on your agendas for today. As of last night, when I checked, a time and a agenda has not yet been posted to their website. So as soon as that's made available, I will send that out as well. And I just wanted to thank Commissioner Cepeda for the presentation of the proclamation to this commission at the January BOCC meeting. It was January 17th. If you haven't seen it, I can send out the link, but you can visit Hillsborough County HTV online, and there I'll send out the link, and you can view the presentation, which contains remarks by Chair Klug. And then we had a press conference, and thank you to Visit Tampa Bay for the assist, but we had every television station known to man in the Tampa Bay area in attendance, and I believe 2 of them picked up the story, and they broadcast different portions. Each story had something a little different. So that was, I think, a resounding success for the first press conference of this commission. So thank you again to everyone who was there and for your work, and look forward to 2024 being a busy week for this commission, and some fantastic work that's going to be done in the next 12 months.
Okay. Well, thank you for the report, and thank you once again, Commissioner Cepeda, Cameron Cepeda, for your efforts in recognizing this Commission on Human Trafficking. And along those lines, I think Ms. Connie Rose has a press conference she's going to be attending, right? Just a few minutes, and I think Bait News 9 and Spectrum are running a feature this week in Orlando and Tampa. If you want to talk about that, about human trafficking.
Sorry, I didn't know you wanted me to talk about it.
Yes,
I apologize. And so Bay News and Iowa Spectrum, actually out of Orlando, is doing a series on human trafficking. And so they have spoken and will continue to, as they're doing this series, with several organizations and providers throughout the state for this series. And they are very, very broad in how they're doing it. Actually, Charles Klug was also part of it. And they are looking at, what is going on for our services, what do we have for resources, how are we dealing with it. They're talking about now about the cuts in funding and how is that going to affect us in the state of Florida, since we already have a lack of resources. For me today, I was trafficked out of my high school, which is Jefferson High School, nothing against Jefferson High School. So at 3 o'clock, we were actually doing my interview in front of Jefferson, and then moving over to the school board's meeting tonight at Wharton High School so that we can have a conversation with the parents of student online safety. And they don't have the exact date of when the whole series is going to roll out, but it will be, I think, about March or April is what they're looking at, because with edits and all of that.
Okay, thank you. Just in closing, you have any old business or new business you would like to talk about?
There was a new business item, I don't know if you want to talk about it. Ms. Glacier had emailed me regarding a public database in Florida that no longer, so if you want to
Yeah, when we were
talk about that.
discussing legislation, maybe that should have come up, I apologize. The John list is now, I'm sure some of you have read, is being removed. There's no longer any funding for it. And correct me if I'm wrong on the timeline, but in the 3 to 5 years, 3 years was it up?
It was 3 years.
3 years.
It was required to be renewed.
Required to be renewed, it wasn't renewed. In that 3 years, they had one guy listed on it. And I love everybody in this fight. I know some of us come from different directions and we go at each other, but we all have the same vigor to get done what we need to get done. I just find it interesting that you see every other night on the news, we have these big boards up with 20, 30 guys that, oh, look who we got in this sting, look who we got in this sting, look at this. And we only had one guy on the list. So I guess I would like for all of us to try to keep better track of what happens to these people once they get arrested for these offenses. What are these cases pled down to? How many people are actually convicted of human trafficking offenses, and what are their punishments? So that's all I really would like to say. I just think it's sad that it's gone and that it was never really used in the first place.
I have a question, a follow-up question to that. You mentioned the terminology and then all of the resources coming together. So is there a link to the follow-up question that you have, which is, how do we close that gap of seeing not just that the arrests are made, but also that those individuals are convicted, those individuals are, is that connection done? Or are we just taking the information on the human trafficking victim themselves? Or are we looking at both sides of it? And then if we are looking at both sides, what's the sustainability of those sources that are feeding into the report that you provided us?
So that's a lot of questions. So the issue of essentially it was a Johns registry, electronic Johns registry, similar to the sex offender website that Department of Corrections runs. That's a state policy decision. And along with a state policy decision, you need the funding to operationalize it. As far as the funding to nonprofits and organizations that provide services to survivors, you brought up a good point in sustainability. And that's probably the bane of my existence, not just for this target population, but for all target populations, is once you build it, you need to keep it running. You build a safe house, you need to fund it next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. You fund a specialty program in the criminal justice system. You need to fund it the year after that and the year after that. You know, one good point or an example is the position over at court administration that was funded through this group initially, and then to make sure it's sustained, we moved that funding over into Administrative Office of the Courts budget so that we never had to worry about that issue in a year-to-year funding effort. It's always a struggle, and our nonprofit friends here can attest to that. They go year by year in funding sometimes, and it is a real challenge. And you know, they have significant investments in capital, buying buildings and safe houses, but also funding of those safe houses. Once you build a safe house, you got to have staff to run it. You've got to feed people. You've got to get them to the doctor's office and court and therapy and all those things. So it is an ongoing issue. You know, the Board of County Commissioners discusses that quite a bit in terms of, you know, what are those critical services that we need to continue funding. And that same conversation is happening at the state and the federal level. You know, I have many lines of business under me. One of them is the county's grants management office, and they provide a lot of technical assistance to small and medium-sized nonprofits specifically for that. You know, they'll get something up and running, and they need to understand that they need to have a braided funding philosophy moving forward, because you're not guaranteed that that federal or that state or that local funding source is always going to be there. So by helping them build a braided funding philosophy, it makes them more resilient in the future. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And then that education piece of making sure that we communicate that well to the community so that they realize that it's there, because that's one of the areas that I think that this group really could do a wonderful job at from that education component. It's understanding where the resources are, understanding that braided philosophy that you just spoke to, and getting that message out in a consistent manner, because I don't think our community is well-served in that area of knowing where all those
I agree with
resources
you,
are.
and I can say every other major target population, child abuse, mental health, substance abuse, the stakeholder pool is much broader. When it comes to human trafficking, I'm going to be quite honest with you, for the last 10 years, it's the nonprofits that have been carrying the water. And not until the last 5 years did other stakeholders step up and try and, you know, move the dial forward. So that has been an issue. I know this group has talked about the Bright Project over at USF. That's an important first step to make sure that we do have a comprehensive list of what resources are out there. Because before that, you would get an info sheet with providers on it, and then the next week it would be obsolete. And you needed people like Sarah and Connie out there saying, hey, this organization is doing this. They just expanded their program. It was really a word-of-mouth kind of situation, and not until recently did we start to have some light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, just in wrapping up, once again, thank the Commissioner and the BOCC for the proclamation, the press conference. I think there was a lot of awareness generated this month. And hopefully this continues throughout the year. It's not just limited to January, and that we continue with this. I have received a lot of positive feedback as far as standpoint of people seeing things, hearing the proclamation, saying, what can I do? How can I assist? You know, so maybe that's something we can do as well. Maybe create a website or something where allow people some opportunities to participate as far as in the awareness campaign. And there's opportunities for the public who are very concerned. I think they feel a little frustrated. There's not much they can do about it, but I think there are people who want to volunteer and want to be more active. And so something maybe we can pursue. With that, I want to call the meeting to an end, and I hope to see you next month. At February 22nd is our steering committee and our legislative judicial committees. Thank you.